Welcome everyone. We'll get started shortly. We'll take about 30, 40 seconds more, and then we'll start. Hello everyone. We're going to get started. Okay, so today we got a pretty interesting session on CIS compliance automation. Many of you probably know who are attending this today. CIS stands for Center for Internet Security, and it's a nonprofit consortium that has published quite a few benchmarks, especially for the cloud side. So we'll be focusing on the public cloud side today and talking about, many of you are probably are using CIS compliance and CIS rules. And, many times we go to our clients and ask, how's your CIS score? And they always say, well, it's kind of low. And so we ask the question, well, why is it low? And it's because, well, the tools haven't caught up in terms of helping us remediate those resources. And also we have challenges with prioritization of alerts. So those are the two common things that we hear. And so we thought that, it would be great if we can focus on those two items today and other items around governance, but specifically around automation and how to automate. So it's not just automating CIS rules, but you would have to actually look at, other rules as well. So with that, let me go ahead and kind of kick this off a bit. Okay, so what are we going to learn today? So very quickly, we're going to do an overview of security challenges in the cloud and what is CIS, as most of you probably already know, and how do we use it effectively to do risk prioritization and also automation. So those are the two things. And we're also going to talk about how to build automations via security controls, which are important as part of your overall governance strategy. And talk about this closed loop security and compliance process for DevOps as well. That area is heavily neglected today, where it's predominantly running on Terraform and CloudFormation templates and so on. So security tools is slowly beginning to catch up on taking care of that side as well through scanning those sources, CFTs and Terraform, and finding those specific configuration issues on the DevOps side and addressing those as well before you make the change in the commit side. We'll touch on that, and of course, at the very tail end of the presentation, we'll spend about 3-4 minutes on Cloudnosis, who we are. We're a cloud security platform company, and we'll talk about Cloud Eye platform and how it addresses all this automation and risk prioritization and governance and so on. Okay, so a little bit about myself. So my name is Kamran Mehboob. I'm the Director of Product Management here, and I work with many, many clients, small and large, listening in to the market and to our customers, and building capabilities that meets market needs with other team members. So hopefully you guys can hear my audio okay, and if not, then go ahead and send me a message, and I'll try to fine tune as we go. Okay, all right. One of the areas we want to touch, which is Cloud governance. So we have an ebook out for 2021. We actually updated quite a bit with the things that we learned over the last year as the market is shifting a bit. And so there's about a 35-page ebook that you guys, if you want to take advantage of, you can download it directly from the website. If you were to go out there, you'll be able to see that. Okay, and looking at common types of security challenges from a policy violation standpoint in a cloud, this is around cloud security posture management space as Gartner tracks the space. So we have found that these are the percentages that we see, from our different surveys that we have taken. So now some of these are fairly simple, but still we do see issues with that. And this is all because of lack of governance. So IAM policies are the big one that we see, where it's just all over the place, and the permissions are very over permissive. Security groups, that's another big area, and data store. So making sure that data stores are locked down, tight, encrypted, and so on and so forth. And we see this in all cloud. It doesn't have to be Amazon, although Amazon get a lot of press on this just because there's quite a few users for Amazon's, perhaps, for sure. So what's causing these misconfigurations? Aside from looking at the numbers, you have to look at cloud itself. It has velocity, right? So it's agility. It has volume. It has a variety of data sets, variety of services, and it has disparity as well. So multi-cloud makes it even more difficult. So if you just put those 4 boxes of challenges together and then ask, okay, what's causing these policy mishaps and people are not following the rules and so on, you'll find that a lot of it is human error, because folks are going in and hand editing these policies and hand editing these configurations, and that's because there is no automation. Okay, no automation falls into the next category a bit more, where 54% just there's a team awareness issues with security policies and so on, and that's because the policies are all over the place. They're not organized. They're not centralized. They're not dispersed to different team members, and we see that quite a bit. And there is no common platform that hosts all the policies and pushes them out and enforces them. Okay, and policy as code is a big one. Now people write policy as code, which is great, but then you end up with lots of scripts that are not well managed, and they're in these open files that people can actually get in and see what's going on. So you definitely want to lock those down and have a better process of disseminating those and organizing those and performing change management as well. And the last one is 49% is because of lack of adequate control and oversight. And so we're talking about no governance or very little governance. Let's just say that. So all these combined together, can have a fairly low score on your CIS, and certainly a low, security posture. So what do we want to do as a next step? So what we want to do as a next step is to pick our security controls, and ideally for each layer of security. Now, this is a very common graph that you see in Defense in Depth. We like to use the same exact thing for the cloud as well, because yes, some of it has changed, like physical perimeter and so on. Okay, that's been taken care of by your cloud vendors. But everything else above that, networks and host and application data and policy procedure processes still falls under you. And certainly you have to have a governance risk management process around these. And all of these layers are controlled by IAM, Identity and Access Management, on the cloud, right? So 4 things you need to do. One is to select your policy set. Okay, and ideally you want to start with CIS. And we'll talk about CIS a bit more later also. And number 2 is to not just selecting these policies, but to be able to enforce them effectively. And as you enforce them, you'll find that there's going to be lots of alarms and alerts and findings. You need to organize these findings, perform risk prioritization, and then be able to remediate those findings as well. So there's automation in all these pieces, okay? To organize the policies, there's automation, enforce policies, there's automation, and remediation is definitely all automation. And of course, mapping to compliance framework is also very important, because if someone comes up to you, they're not going to say, I hope your security is good. Can you explain it in a few words? They're going to say, what is your CIS score, or how compliant are you to NIST 853, okay, or ISO 27001. So these are international standards that you need to comply to, or should be moving in that direction if you're not, and then be able to answer back. So mapping your security controls to compliance is an important activity. Okay, so let's talk about governance in depth in public cloud. What are some of the key focus areas that we need to pay attention to, right? So, governance is really nothing more than a formally managed process around policies, and ideally it's mapped to a framework of your choice. Now, the word is in near real time. This is not a one-time activity that you do once a year and call it a day, or every 6 months, or review every 3 months. Actually, it needs to be near real time. And you must be asking, how is this even possible? It is possible if you pick the right platforms that can actually host your policies, track your policies, and be able to check those policies in real time against the cloud vendor's configuration and give you a feedback. So discovery is a big phase, control framework is a big phase, and audit and remediation. And they all three work together as a life cycle of cloud security management process. So visibility, control, and remediation, all three are required to perform cloud security governance. And we're going to break down into these areas. We're going to show you how to do it with the cloud vendors' tools themselves, and then how to pull it all together, right? And the goal is to really improve accountability and improve your efficacy rate. So cloud has agility, right? It has velocity. So that in itself, because of its hundreds of components are running at the same time from a services standpoint, and each service may have anywhere from 5 to 25 to 30 controls. So how do you, as a human, physically go through and check all these things and be able to give assurance every hour on the hour, which is not humanly possible. So you need compliance framework, you need continuous monitoring and automation, and ideally, even before you commit to the infrastructure, we hope that you're probably scanning your CI/CD pipelines for any poor configurations that do not meet your policy guardrails from a governance standpoint. So all those things are important. Okay, so let's take some a talk track around tooling a bit. Okay, so let's say you're running AWS, right? And as you can see, the list of tools that are available in each layer of security, from configuration management to operating system to log management and automation. And monitoring, and so on and so forth. And then there's a last layer at the bottom that says governance, guardrails, risk management, alert automation, and risk prioritization, right? That's a very important layer. None of the cloud vendor themselves actually provide any tooling for this. They do provide guidance. They do provide components like Lambda and config and so on. But you have to put all that together, and you have to manage that together, okay? Or you can invest in some third-party commercial tools, like ours. CloudNose is one of them, or Prisma, or Dome9, or DV Cloud, and Lacework, which are also fairly popular tools that are used for this layer. And so this problem gets even more complex when you go into multi-cloud, because now you have to manage security controls and all these different findings that are coming out from all these different tools. That's just cloud vendors' native tools. We're talking about AWS, Azure, and GCP. But if you go into the vendors tool column, You'll see, for configuration management, you may have Puppet running or Chef or Ansible. For OS and host, you may be running Tenable or Qualys or Nessus, right? So how do we bring all these together and perform risk mitigation, perform automation, and perform prioritization? That's becoming very, very important now because cloud has just as many layers as you had in your private data center, except it's more complex because it's a service, and every service has its own set of configurations, and then you have a specific set of tools that are running on that layer of security. So how do we bring it all together? We're going to talk about that in the next few slides and try to make some sense around the automation piece. If you guys have any questions or comments, certainly you guys can post it in the chat and I'll be able to answer it for you as I go along. Okay, so a little bit about CIS in general, right? So CIS has quite a few benchmarks that they have published, everything from operating system to cloud services and to different areas. So we're going to focus around on cloud services. Let's take example for AWS. So they have like about 44 plus sort of controls with CIS benchmarks. And if you look at those samples, what they look like, everything from making sure that the policies that are changing are being tracked, and they're tracked to specific setting, which they do provide as well, right? So all of these has to be they're all graded based on the benchmarks. And if you don't know about this, that's the first area you want to dig in and start using these security controls to actually manage your process. Okay, and as you get mature at it, you'll find that CIS is a good starting point, but it's not enough. So just one example of a security control is avoid the use of root account. Okay. And so this PDF, if you can just pull it off the internet, it'll show you step by step for each security controls and how to set it in a CLI environment, and then be able to get the findings done. Okay, so fairly straightforward, but lots of work involved, lots of work. Now, so as I mentioned earlier, that when you start with CIS and get good at it, you'll find that CIS does a good job, but if you want to be secure, further secure, you really got to invest time in, well, I really need to secure my buckets completely, right? Well, then all these rules that you see on the right-hand side, you would have to go and write these rules through scripts or go through the menus and try to set those for each bucket. And as you can see, it's probably not possible because you're probably running hundreds of buckets in your environment. So again, automation tooling is needed to check these settings and check against your standard. So do you have a standard, which is a control a security policy standard that meets or exceeds, or perhaps does not exceed, and there's a gap there? So those are the controls that you would need to write. I'll give you another example. Virtual private cloud, right? So same thing. Those are the two very important services that AWS customers use today, and you guys are using today. So again, VPC, same thing. So VPC controls, there are few in the CIS benchmark from a security standpoint, but you should be looking at all these others. Okay, so when you look at all these controls and other events that are happening in your tooling, you'll find that all of these consolidated brings lots and lots of alerts and data, right? And this is where you absolutely need to spend the time and tooling investment to be able to pull all these together and then create like evidence-based security compliance reporting, risk prioritization, and be able to have a risk rating environment on your policies. If this policy failed, my risk is going to be high, but this one failed, that's okay. It's going to be medium or low, and so on. Okay. So this is the whole process that you need to walk through from a workflow standpoint to consolidate that. So as you can see, it's a quite a bit of work, a challenge. Now, if you were to go through that, you should be able to generate a report like this very quickly on the fly within seconds to say, I'm going to give you a GDPR report on my cloud services, and this is what it looks like. A very quick snapshot of the account that it's running in, the inventory that's there, which the Article 25, okay, we are testing all these controls in Article 25, and there are 100 controls, and so many are failing and so many are passing, and so we're going to pass that control set. So this is how you basically want to get to from your automation process. Just having CIS ruled is not enough. Just having your policies alone is not enough. You need to centralize them. You need to map them to a security framework of your choice, whether it's GDPR, NIST, and so on and so forth. It's important because this is where you need to get to. This is where you know what is your security posture and how well are you doing. A little bit about automation. So again, all this consolidation brings it can bring lots of noise, but hopefully not. You guys have done a good job on filtering and picking the right policies and controls and focusing on, and you have a rating system in place that says high, medium, low, to be able to have you select certain things. But still, even going through all that process, still going to generate a lot of findings. Now, when you get findings, for each security policy, you have a remediation flow, right? And most of these flows people write in scripts. And I'm telling you, scripts are getting old. It's very hard to read them. You have to be a programmer. Sometimes if someone leaves, you have to go reinvent and kind of see what's going on in that script and update them. It's very hard to maintain script as well. You need to invest in some kind of a security orchestration tooling. Okay, so we at Cloud Gnosis have a capability called Playbooks. It's a very drag and drop, no code, or we call it low code capability, that you have the ability to not only process your remediation flows, but also it has the ability to import your findings. So let's say Tenable, you want to load in all the Tenable findings and be able to do risk correlation and prioritization with cloud security posture. You can do that, or be able to combine it with multiple signals that are coming in and be able to do other things to it. So those are the kind of things that you'll be able to do with a more of a workflow type of a capability. So try to look into those things. It's going to save you a lot of time and energy and effort as you scale out your cloud environment. So, having it automated, the value is it's always continuous. It's always, continuously scanning your infrastructure, let's say every hour on the hour, perhaps, or that certain signals or certain security policies are running inside your cloud environment in near real time at all times. So, for example, you may have a CloudWatch metric set for someone who creates a root account but doesn't have MFA turned on. Okay, if that were to happen, they didn't turn on the MFA. If you have that log metric turned on, you'll be able to see it within seconds. And the minute you see it, hopefully you have automation capabilities running to do the remediation process. So kind of giving you a full 360 view, closed loop process, on your environment. So a quick summary is that, ideally, absolutely, you do want to start with your cloud native provided tools. It's a good starting point. So for AWS, like GuardDuty and config and Trail and all that stuff is important. And to be able to turn on, Security Hub and other things, which it has a CIS scanner in there. That's all good. But ultimately, you want to bring in other signals together. So you have other tooling for operating system, for host, for file integrity management, for data loss prevention. All of these tools at some point needs to come together, at least from a policy enforcement standpoint and from a risk prioritization standpoint. Organizational responsibilities are important. You need to have people in the right places that are going to govern and benchmark the cloud program. See, benchmark is an important keyword. So, I mean, you need to know how well you're doing as compared to the standard. And then technical responsibility and controls, we can't say enough about that. From making sure that all security controls are in place, tracked, managed, enforced, and benchmark. Okay. So with that, in the next 5 minutes, as I said at the tail end, I'll cover our platform real quick. So we have a hosted and also SaaS, both available platform that you can license on a per node basis, per instance basis, and we only charge for database and compute. That's it. And all the other security pieces are basically provided in the platform. So the goal is to give you complete visibility, compliance, and governance across all of your policies, not just for your infrastructure layer, but also for operating system layer and so on and so forth. So we went through the headaches of mapping all these controls and creating security policies around that, so that the heavy lifting has been done for you. And when you're done with it, you should be able to create an account in less than 3 minutes and hit the scan button and be able to see a view like this of your infrastructure. So not only are you seeing all the inventory, but you're also seeing it in a tower format, and you're also seeing all of your risk in those towers and where they exist, and you can filter by accounts and really kind of get granular, even by tags and so on. So all of that capability is available. Now, also, you can see it from a geolocation standpoint where they're at, and in different layers. So certain regions have a certain amount of risk versus others, or you could do it by even applications and so on. We also give you a consolidated view of your compliances. So what is your compliance score on NIST or HIPAA or PCI and so on? And also, how well are you doing in the encryption in motion category versus logging versus disaster recovery? So all of that is also graded for your cloud accounts of choice if you were to filter by that. Now, these reporting for the compliances, then this deep dive, you can actually drill in to see exactly what's going on in those areas, which line items are failing, look at the view details, all the resources, and why they're failing. You can also look at all the signatures that we have in our library, and if there's something that's there that you don't that we don't have, you can actually write your own custom policies as well. I talked about the playbooks capability and automation, so that's also built into the platform. And we have different frameworks in place, and if there's one that's not available, you see a button that says custom regulation. You can actually build your own from these different set of seed policies. We generate some pretty reasonable reports, more of executive reporting and also technical reports for auditors and for CISOs, and that's pretty much it. So that takes us to our Q&A session. We have a few minutes, and I'll be happy to take some questions for you. Okay, so we have some questions coming in around how do you do anomaly detection on inbound traffic? Okay, so first of all, we're actually not physically looking at the log files or transactions from a logging standpoint, because that problem has been solved by the Splunk of the world, right? However, we are looking at transactions, important transactions in your CloudTrail, CloudWatch as they happen, and then we have log metrics on them, and then we catch those events and actually post them through our platform and report on them, and more importantly, remediate them very quickly because they are high risk. So those are the things that we do from a network traffic standpoint. Yeah. Okay, so a question around how do we license and price this thing? It's actually pretty straightforward. We license by instances. So an instance for us is a database, an instance for us is a compute, and the pricing is actually on the web is fairly low, starting about $5 per instance per month. and that's how we charge. Pretty straightforward. You can actually run a trial and go to the billing portal, and you'll see how many resources we counted out of your cloud accounts, and you can very quickly do the math right there and know what the running cost would be of your monitoring environment. Okay. Question around. Let's see. This is a little bit of an interesting one. It says about how can you stop brute forcing type of an attack or more of a denial of a service attack. Actually, that's what it's saying in words. DDoS attacks. Okay, so what we do there is that all we can do is check to make sure your WAF settings. First of all, you have a WAF running, and the settings are correct based on the best recommended settings. So that's what we do. But from an actual a stop of a DDoS, that's not something directly we do. Of course, that's something that WAF and other tooling that cloud vendors provide can handle that. Okay. Question around: do you analyze IPs and show bad IPs? The answer is yes. We do it through a third-party mechanism, or if you have CrowdStrike or some of the service you're running, we have the ability to feed that into our platform and present that as a, like I said, holistic view of the risk to see what's happening on your environments. Yeah, so the answer is yes. Question around, do you integrate with SIM tools? The answer is yes. There's multiple SIM tools that we can integrate into. We can push events there and push reporting and other risk reporting in that GRC process or SIM process as well. Question around third-party ingestion. So, for example, loading in Splunk data or other tools. So, generally speaking, yes, Splunk does generate findings, of course, and we have the ability to pull that in. But we often find that people are fairly satisfied with their Splunk process. It's these other tools that are proliferating around the cloud that's testing other layers of the security. We find that those findings gets lost or not executed on or not acted upon or tracked effectively. So we find that customers want to bring all that into one central place and then be able to do risk analysis and risk prioritization. That's something we do in our playbooks environment, which we talked about earlier. Okay. If there's no more questions, we are kind of out of time. So again, you can just request your questions around info@cloudgnosis.com, and we can address those questions. Okay. Thank you, and have a great day.